You're listening to The World at 8 with Lynn Mozart. The World at 8, the number one in nationalist news.
Highlights of the news today, Wednesday 13th of August 2014. More than 2,000 council employees earn more than $100,000 a year, new figures show. ISIS leaflets handed out on Oxford Street to encourage British Muslims to join jihad. Bungling Leeds burglar caught by sting operation after urinating on wasp nest. GP who had oral sex with patient escaped strike-off after tribunal rules his behaviour was not incompatible with his registration. French Hamlet death to Jews mulls name change. Death threat against Vienna's Yazidis. IMNOKUFFAR today on World at 8. Journalist Simone Kamili killed in Gaza missile blast. Ebola death tops 1,000 in West Africa. The World Health Organization says use of test treatment is ethical. And finally, 2 for One Day Wednesday. UK news. More than 2,000 council employees earn more than $100,000 a year, new figures show. Over 2,000 council employees are making more than $100,000 a year, according to new research by the Taxpayers Alliance. The 2012-2013 Town Hall Rich List identified at least 2,181 staff who received total remuneration in excess of the 6-figure mark, a 5% drop on the previous year's figure of 2,295. But despite the national fall, the research found 93 councils had increased the number of staff, making more than £100,000 in the same period. The people with the 3 highest remuneration packages, which include all redundancy payouts as they are no longer in the jobs, plus pension contributions, are as follows. David Crawford, Executive Director of Social Care Services for Glasgow Council, £486,303. Robert McIlwain, Executive Director at South Lanarkshire Council, £470,696. Larry Ford, Executive Director at South Lanarkshire Council, £447,295. Jonathan Isserby, Chief Executive of the Taxpayers Alliance, said it was good news the figure was falling, but suggested it might only be because many authorities had finished paying eye-watering redundancy bills. Taxpayers expect their councils to be filling potholes, not pay packets. The list also identified 542 council employees who received remuneration of more than £150,000 in 2012-2013. Of these, 34 made more than £250,000 a year. World at 8 disgusting, these pen pushers are just puppets on a very lucrative string. ISIS leaflets handed out on Oxford Street to encourage British Muslims to join jihad. Police were today probing leaflets handed out in the West End by radical students encouraging British Muslims to join the Islamic State, ISIS. Dozens of the leaflets were circulated on Oxford Street saying it is the responsibility of Muslims to pledge allegiance to the Khaleef, a reference to Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, the self-appointed leader of extremists waging a murderous campaign across northern Iraq. Images of the group were posted on Twitter by users angered by the claims, including one British Muslim who claimed she had been racially abused after challenging the group. The men from Luton are former students of band cleric Omar Bakri and firebrand preacher Anjem Choudary. Scotland Yard today confirmed it was assessing whether the contents of the leaflets is in breach of anti-terrorism laws. The spread of pro-ISIS material has become a major concern for intelligence chief, and last night's demonstration is one of the most high-profile to date. A Met spokesman said the Metropolitan Police Service had been made aware of leaflets which reports states were distributed in the Oxford Street area. We are assessing the content of the leaflet to establish whether any criminal offences have been committed. World at 8. Now the point is, would the police allow any nationalist group to give out leaflets in favour of obliterating Islam in this country? I don't think so. It would be causing racial hatred or religious hatred, wouldn't it? Or of course one of our own tribe would probably complain. Bungling Leeds burglar caught by sting operation after urinating on wasp nest. A bungling Leeds burglar was caught by cops after a painful sting operation by an angry swarm of wasps. Jamie Brown was detained after he unwittingly urinated on a nest during his getaway, a bad idea that prompted the wasps to sting him dozens of times. The 29-year-old had broken into a Leeds, Yorkshire furniture store and was making off with a £340 fish tank when police swarmed the area. Trying to escape, he dived into a bush where he unwisely decided to relieve himself. His urine disturbed the insects' home and they attacked, forcing him to flee his haven. Cops spotted Brown limping down the road, crying in pain, sweating heavily and rubbing his head, reports the Halifax Courier. After placing him under arrest, officers took him to Leeds General Infirmary Hospital, where he was treated for 6 hours before being discharged into police custody. Brown appeared at Leeds Magistrates Court, where he was sentenced to 24 weeks in jail after pleading guilty to theft, the Courier reported. World at 8, good on the wasps though. The plods should not have taken him to hospital, but straight to a prison cell. GP who had oral sex with patient escaped strike-off after tribunal rules his behaviour was not incompatible with his registration. Edmonton, North London. A family doctor who had oral sex with a patient escaped being struck off after a tribunal ruled his behaviour was not fundamentally incompatible with ongoing registration. Dr Alexandra Rajendram made her home visit to a woman while working as a GP at Morecambe Surgery in Upper Edmonton, North London. He hugged her, kissed her on the mouth, touched her and kissed her breast before touching her intimately. Rajendram then asked her if she would like to have oral sex, before pulling down his trousers and underwear and allowing her to perform a sex act on him. European news. French hamlet Death to Jews mulls name change. French authorities will next month consider changing the name of a tiny hamlet near Paris, which is officially known as La Mort aux Juifs, Death to Jews, after a top Jewish group protested. We will look at this problem right at the beginning of September to find a new name for the hamlet, Serge Montan, a senior official from the village of Courtmeau, which has jurisdiction over the hamlet, told AFP on Wednesday. Montan explained that the name, which dates back at least far as the Middle Ages, is still on the official cadastral list, although the tiny hamlet of 1 farm and 2 houses has been known as the Rue de Luzière on the postal register since 1992. The hamlet shot to prominence after the Simon Wiesenthal Centre, a renowned Jewish rights group, complained on Tuesday to Interior Minister Bernard Cazeneuve about the name. It's extremely shocking that his name has slipped under the radar in the 70 years that have passed since France was liberated from Nazism and the pro-Nazi Vichy regime, wrote the group's Director of International Affairs, Shimon Samuels. But on Tuesday, the Deputy Mayor of Courtmeau, population 289, dismissed the concerns as ridiculous. Why change a name that goes back to the Middle Ages or even further? We should respect these old names, Marie-Elizabeth Secretin told AFP. World at 8 agreed. So when a town is called Death to Islam, will they leave it in place? That I doubt. Death threats against Vienna's Yazidis. Austria's Federal Office Against Terrorism and for Protection of the Constitution, BVT, is alarmed due to death threats against the Yazidi community in Vienna, according to a report in the Courier newspaper. It is currently investigating a newly founded scene of radical Islamists whose members support the Syrian-Iraqi terrorist group Islamic State, IS. Karl-Heinz Grönblock, a spokesman for the Interior Ministry, told the Austrian press agency that BVT is observing various radical groups who have been posting threats against the Yazidi on social media. However, Grönblock said that he did not believe that there was a real threat to the Yazidi community in Austria and that there was a difference between someone condoning something and actually committing crimes. About 700 Yazidi are estimated to live in Austria. An activist involved in the Yazidi initiative, Wadi, who did not want to be named, told the Courier that they all feel threatened. This fear has increased due to the authorities' idleness to react to extremists who run about with jihad symbols, he said. The Courier previously reported on a group of young migrants in Vienna, mainly from Florisdorf or Donaustadt, who sympathise with radical groups like ISIS. World at 8, where you get Muslim immigrants, whether legal or illegal or asylum seekers or whatever they like to call themselves, you will get trouble with a capital T. Now I hand you over to IMNOKUFFAR, who today talks about Islam and control and more.
Hi folks, it's IMNOKUFFAR here. This little ditty is called Protect Your Rights, because I am rapidly coming to the conclusion that unless the non-Muslim British community protects itself and puts the fear of retribution into the cold hearts of these Muslims, we are finished as an entity, nation and race. I do not count Muslims as being British, as their primary allegiances are to their religion, or as I prefer to call it, a cult that controls all aspects of their lives, politically, socially, economically, and in terms of spirituality, such as they have it. In effect, Islam is a totalitarian project and is akin to fascism and communism. But most of you knew that anyway. It is now blatantly obvious that the Frankfurt School collusion with the police, social services, the judicial system, and the politicians is fueling the disintegration of society as we know and knew it. Only this time with the support of Islam and its adherents, who view multiculturalism as a means to gain power. We have been betrayed on all levels, and the media continually fuels this with the inculcation or repetition that Islam is a religion of peace, and that it is a minority who carry out these acts of grooming, sedition and terrorism. This may be true. They certainly said nothing after 7/7, and in parts of London after 9/11 they were dancing in the streets. And after 7/7, I happen to know, because there was stuff appearing on the net, that there were celebrations taking place in London and in other places. Now, the powers that be are ignoring the fact that terrorist actions are mandated in the Quran. They are the classic methods of jihad against the kuffar. Those with any knowledge of history concerning these peoples will know this. Unfortunately, for most of the British people, these aspects of Islam are hidden away and only come to light during and after terrorist attacks and grooming, etc. by them. That is, the Muslims, that is. The Muslims hide behind the veil of racism, even though Islam is not a race. This gives them even more excuses to exploit the consciences of those who do not understand their true motivations. The media finds some sort of excuse or lie, such as calling these people Asian, not Muslim, Asian. That is a direct insult to Hindus and Sikhs and others who happen to be Asian, as they are then implicated in these crimes. Not surprisingly, people from these communities are outraged at this slur and have started to attack Muslims. Some Muslims want outright terrorist attacks and think they will be supported by various political and social groupings on the left, and they're probably correct. Others want a more moderate approach and prefer to outbreed the kuffar and gain political and social influence like they have in Tower Hamlets and in other locations. George Galloway's party Respect is a good indication as to the motivations and methods they use in Muslim majority areas, and a good deal of the stupid kuffar actually supported them, particularly the students, which just goes to show that our educational system is a wreck, a shambles, and has been completely penetrated by political correctness and multiculturalism. Now, the indications from all over Europe are that Muslims are becoming more and more despised and hated. It is the working class and the middle class who are leading the charge. For instance, 74% of the French now distrust the Muslims. There is a massive distrust in Germany and in many other European nations. Now, this has had a good impact and been a huge boost to nationalists all over Europe. The end of the multicultural experiment is now coming. I hope and pray. We cannot afford it anymore. These peoples are mainly parasites and quasi-revolutionaries who use our judicial systems as justification to promote their own filthy causes that have no reason to be here. If they do not like it in Europe or England, or the UK, then they should pack their bags and leave. But they won't, because they know their own homeland has been wrecked by this vicious and sadistic and misogynistic religion, if you can call it a religion, as I said before. And also that they could never, ever have the rights they have here, or be paid for inciting jihad in our lands. They are taking us for fools with the aid of our own fair judicial systems and our Western philosophy, and with the aid of the MSM. This philosophy and our judicial systems they despise, as it is man-made law. There may be some who respect us, but most think we are stupid, ignorant fools, and believe me, I think that is the majority. They cannot be trusted, and there is no such thing as moderate Islam. All these moderates are awaiting is the opportunity to take power like they have in Tower Hamlets, Bradford and other areas. And if they are moderate, then why do they vote for people who are distinctly not moderate? I finish by saying this. The Quran is the equivalent of Mein Kampf and is a political and social training manual for the implementation of Sharia and jihad. Have a nice day.
Thank you, Eric. Erudite and interesting as usual. World news. Journalist Simone Camilli killed in Gaza missile blast. An Italian journalist was among 5 people killed when an unexploded missile detonated in northern Gaza. The blast in Beit Lahia happened as bomb squad officers attempted to dismantle the device on Wednesday. Simone Camilli, 35, was killed along with a colleague and another 3 Palestinians. At least 6 people were also wounded in the explosion, 3 of them critically. Gaza's police force said the head of the bomb squad, his deputy and another officer were killed. The deaths came as Egyptian negotiators aimed to secure a further ceasefire from both sides to extend a 3-day truce, which is due to expire at 10 p.m. World at 8. What was she doing, sitting on the bloody thing? I just wish a few of our biased news reporters and BBC and ITV would get in the way of a bomb. Ebola death toll tops 1,000 in West Africa. World Health Organization says use of test treatments is ethical. As the death toll from the Ebola outbreak in 4 West African nations officially climbed above 1,000, the World Health Organization said the use of unproven experimental treatments and vaccines is ethical given the magnitude of the crisis. Maria Paul Kieni, Assistant WHO Director General, said she hopes that efforts to produce more of an Ebola treatment developed by a small San Diego biopharmaceutical company, as well as other drugs under development, could result in wider availability later this year or early in 2015. There is currently no vaccine or cure for Ebola, but several treatments are in various stages of clinical development. The San Diego company, MAP Pharmaceuticals, has said that the remaining supply of its Z-MAP treatment, which was used on 2 US missionaries who contracted the Ebola virus, was exhausted after it sent several doses to Liberia. The Liberian government said Tuesday it would give MZAP to 2 doctors, Sukunis Ireland and Abraham Borba, who had fallen ill with the virus while treating patients. As the outbreak worsens, US officials said they intend to fast-track development of an Ebola vaccine and could begin human trials next month. The potential vaccine has shown encouraging results in non-human primates, and if human testing goes well, it could be available in limited amounts next year. At the same time, the Food and Drug Administration has said it continues to work with other federal agencies, such as the National Institutes of Health, to fund the development of Ebola drugs and to speed up treatments already in the pipeline. Last week, the FDA said it had removed one regulatory hurdle for an Ebola drug under development by Canadian company Tecmira. The move would allow the potential use of the drug for Ebola victims in the near term. World at 8, who cares? As long as they shut down travel to and from Africa for the duration, Europe doesn't have to worry. But as that won't happen, just wait and see what excuses they have for not doing the right thing. And finally, 2 for 1 Day Wednesday. Subject: an elderly couple texting. An elderly couple who had just learnt how to send text messages on their mobile phones. The wife was a romantic type and the husband was more of a no-nonsense guy. One afternoon the wife went to meet a friend for coffee. She decided to send her husband a romantic text message and she wrote, "If you are sleeping, send me your dreams. If you are laughing, send me your smile. If you're eating, send me a bite. If you're drinking, send me a sip. If you're crying, send me your tears. I love you." The husband texted back to her, "I'm on the toilet, please advise." And wise sayings by famous people. Sometimes when I look at my children I say to myself, "Lillian, you should have remained a virgin." Lillian Carter, mother of Jimmy Carter. I had a rose named after me and I was very flattered, but I was not pleased to read the description in the catalogue. No good in bed but fine against a wall. Alina Roosevelt. Last week I stated this woman was the ugliest woman I'd ever seen. I have since been visited by her sister and now wish to withdraw that statement. Mark Twain. The secret of a good sermon is to have a good beginning and a good ending and to have the two as close together as possible. George Burns. Santa Claus has the right idea. Visit people only once a year. Victor Borg. Be careful about reading health books. You may die of a misprint. Mark Twain. By all means marry. If you get a good wife you'll become happy. If you get a bad one you'll become a philosopher. Socrates. I was married by a judge. I should have asked for a jury. Groucho Marx. My wife has a slight impediment in her speech. Every now and then she stops to breathe. Jimmy Durante. I have never hated a man enough to give his diamonds back. Zsa Zsa Gabor. Only Irish coffee provides in a single glass all 4 essential food groups: alcohol, caffeine, sugar and fat. Alex Levine. My luck is so bad that if I bought a cemetery people would stop dying. Rodney Dangerfield. Money can't buy you happiness, but it does bring you a more pleasant form of misery. Spike Milligan. Until I was 13 I thought my name was Shut Up. Jonah Muth. I don't feel old. I don't feel anything until noon. Then it's time for my nap. Bob Hope. I never drink water because of the disgusting things fish do in it. W.C. Fields. We could certainly slow the ageing process down if it had to work its way through Congress. Will Rogers. Don't worry about avoiding temptation. As you grow older it will avoid you. Winston Churchill. Maybe it's true that life begins at 50, but everything else starts to wear out, fall out or spread out. Phyllis Diller. By the time a man is wise enough to watch his step, he's too old to go anywhere. Billy Crystal. And the cardiologist's diet. If it tastes good, spit it out. You've been listening to The World at 8. I am Lynn Mozart and I wish you all a very good night.